How many reps should you do to achieve whatever your fitness goal is? Now, some people think that I want to get bigger and stronger, so they go to the gym, they lift some heavy weights until they get tired, do that a few times, and then switch to the next muscle, and they will get bigger and stronger. What they are not doing is optimizing for either strength or size. They're just kind of doing whatever they want, hoping that they'll get the result. Now, some people think that muscle size is directly correlated to muscle strength. That's not necessarily the case. This is not a one-to-one ratio because depending on what you train and how you train, you can have more strength or more size, and these are somewhat independent of each other, although obviously not entirely independent because the bigger your muscle is, generally the stronger it is. A good example to illustrate this is that I myself am not the size of your typical bodybuilder. I'm probably much smaller. However, my 1 rep max all time for bench press is 365 pounds. Now, you take a lot of bodybuilders that are significantly bigger than I am, they can't bench press that much because they train specifically for muscle size, whereas I trained for muscle strength. So let's talk about how we do that. So starting off with low reps, this is specific for strength training. This is typically anything around 5 reps or less. Now what this does is it trains the connection between the brain and the muscle. So when you're lifting a heavy weight, obviously you need the muscle to contract, and a large portion of that is the brain sending the signal through the nerves to cause that muscle to contract. The best way to stimulate that is with heavy weights and low reps. Now, in this scenario, going to failure, or at least going near failure, is beneficial specifically because it will cause additional adaptation of the neurologic system so that your body will be better able to contract the muscle. Obviously, if you're doing something like a bench press and you don't have a spotter, don't go to failure unless you want to be in the news the next day. For muscle size, typically you want to be in this middle rep range. Now what this is somewhere around 10 to 12. The reason we do this is because 10 to 12 reps means you are still lifting a somewhat heavy weight that requires all of the muscle fibers to contract to lift that weight. You want all of the muscle fibers to contract because that way you can have tearing across every single muscle fiber. A common misconception about muscle soreness is that it's due to lactic acid building up in the muscle. That's not the case. When you feel the muscle burn when it's working, that is lactic acid, but it quickly leaves the muscle, goes to the liver, and then is metabolized back into a substance that your body can use for more energy. Muscle soreness is due to tearing in the muscle itself. Now, these are very small tears, but what happens when it tears is that you will get the body to repair itself, and it will repair itself a little bit stronger and a little bit bigger, meaning you repeat that process, do 10 to 12 reps, many sets, you will cause more tearing, and then subsequently you will get more healing, and then the muscle will continue to grow that way. In this scenario, you don't necessarily have to go to failure. Some studies show that it's not even beneficial to go to failure if muscle size is your goal. So we'll just put a no right there. It's also very uncomfortable to go to failure. So if you really just want muscle size, you don't need to bother with going to failure. Now, if you're doing high reps in the gym, this is something around 20 plus, then you are wasting your time if your goal is strength or size. Because it's a high rep, or because it is high reps, meaning more than 20, the weight you're using has to be lower than one that would stimulate the whole muscle. Now, because it's not stimulating the whole muscle, it's not likely to cause much damage, meaning you're not going to get much hypertrophy or muscle growth. At the same time, because you're doing so many reps, again, it's not a very heavy muscle, meaning that your body isn't needing to build new neurologic connections. like we did in the first scenario here, where the brain and the muscle become more adapted to lifting heavy weights. Now, high reps isn't always bad. You have the scenario where you're doing it for therapeutic purposes, where you want to improve blood flow to the muscle. And then it's also basically, this is any form of cardio, doing high reps. So people do train high reps. Maybe you're trying to row across the Atlantic Ocean, then go ahead and do as many rows as you want. And then that would be best suited for that specific scenario. But this is not going to be what you want if you're trying to get stronger or bigger. And there you have it. If you found that information helpful, I would appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. Otherwise, if you want to subscribe, you can learn everything that I know about how to keep the body healthy so that we can have a functional and strong body that will last our entire life.